As my music slowly fades out in the background, welcome back to another episode of the commercialisation of sports series, or as I'm now liking to call it, the Chats. With me, Anthony Morrissey, the CEO and founder of AMSC, Sports Consultancy. Again, as my music, I timed that quite well. I'm getting much better at this. I'm getting much better. Look, it's cold in Sweden at the moment in Gothenburg, and with that comes the joy that comes to looking at sport in the amount of ways we consume it and look at it. It's vast arrays, whether it's different sports, whether it's sports you love, whether it's football, rugby, or in here over in Sweden, everything from ice hockey to skating to everything you could think of. And the man I'm going to interview today is someone who has come across my radar relatively recently, but is an intriguing conversation about how he feels he can help people grow within that marketplace, but quite a variety of different sports. And his own background within sport is also something that is very interesting altogether to me. It is a real conversation I'm looking forward to having, and I can't wait to have him on board. So why don't you just get him involved? Niall Hobbert, how you doing?
Hey Anthony, how are we getting on?
Not a bother at all. I must admit, I'm very jealous. You've got some really cool jerseys behind you. I need to get myself sorted in this end. That's one of the ones that I've been getting given out to all the time on what I wanted to do.
No, they're great memories. Great memories to have around. And bring it back.
It's when you start looking at them and start remembering, and I look like yourself, whether you had hair or not, I don't know, but I start looking at photographs of me with hair and I start remembering those things. Going back to your childhood and bringing up in sport. Where did the passion for sport come from for you? Was it through your family? Was it your friends? What was the one thing you can finger on?
I don't think it was. I just think it was from my friends because. So my mother was a single parent. So back in the 70s, very frowned upon. So, but from the age of 3, I got my first pair of football boots and my first football. And I think my mother didn't see me until I was 12. I was gone. And it was, and looking back on it, like you could find me on the other. So I live in Tralee, County Kerry. So you could find me on the other side of town. And I'd be with my friends. All my friends would be slightly older, and we'd be playing soccer and playing football. And I think it was the natural thing that I just lived around the corner from my football club, Cairns O'Reilly's, which we famously known for David Moore, Micheál Quirk, Barry John, Tommy Walsh, and a few others. So it was really there, kind of just playing with my friends. It was the main one, but having the freedom, and I suppose, again, looking back, what am I, 44, so looking back into the 70s, in the 80s, you can travel, you could go anywhere, and it was safer, and you had all that freedom, and you had that opportunity to play whatever you wanted to play back then. Nowadays, it's very, very structured. You get picked up, and I know my own daughters, you pick them up, you drop them off, you stay and you watch, you pick them up, and you go home. And there's none of it. And that's where it came from. So the love of sports started when I was 3. And my mother, I think, was quite happy because she didn't see me till I was 12, as I said. So it was brilliant. So it worked, and I suppose I was very lucky as well with all the friends I grew up with. They were all into sport, and that helps quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating we say that because it brings back my memories of my childhood, which was different to my kids now, or so different to even my nephews who are a little bit older, what they had within sport. And it very much now, I look back at it and going, as you similar to you, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had my quick breakfast, whatever I could do, and mom didn't have a clue what I ate. And if the guards turned up to my mother's door saying, "Where's your son?" she wouldn't have had a clue. And I think that's kind of nice, and the memories from my own side that's kind of thing.
Funny you say guards. So I remember one story. I was about 8 or 9, and we were playing. So you'd always see me going around with my blue and white ball. So my club colours are blue and white, but I always had a blue and white ball. And my mother always told me, if you're ever lost, stop a guard and ask them to bring you home. I think they were nearly my regular taxi service from the age of 8 to about 12. I'm lost, can you bring me home? Hey, back up, knock on the door. Yeah. First couple of times you get the clip around the ear, and the second, after that, it's like, oh, they're here again. Come in for a couple.
Start getting to know. And again, I love those kind of elements and stories to it. It brings back childhood for me, even in Ireland. From your perspective, when you grew up, you said there was the pitch was literally around the corner. Yeah. Was there any heroes growing up that you could point to and go, God, that was the kind of person I'd like to be like as a kid?
In terms of GAA, I suppose because I was a goalkeeper. Well, I wasn't. I lied. I started outfield, and I played every sport: basketball, football, soccer. I tried hurling. I did athletics. Anything to get me out of school, right? So I was there. I was right there. Whether I was any good or not, that's a different another day story. But I suppose in GAA, Charlie Nelligan would have been he's famous goalkeeper, Kerry goalkeeper. He was one of my heroes, looking up to, saying, "Oh wow, you know, for everything he did." In soccer, Packy Bonner, and that's how I actually got into goals. Was I think I was under 12 or under 13, and I played centre half. So I was a good centre half. And the manager and goalkeeper had an argument, and the goalkeeper went home. And the manager asked me, "Oh, look, any chance you go on goals?" Absolutely, great. So I went in, and we played. I think it was the quarter final of the All Ireland, and we won in extra time, saved the penalty, scored the penalty, and got man of the match. And that was my first game, and I was like, I like this. I don't have to run.
Yeah.
Get the ball. I can use my knee and my elbow to protect myself, so I can hit people and get away with it. And I kind of fell in love with it then because I got the recognition straight away, and I think that recognition was something that I always had outfield, but there was you're competing with 13 other outfield players, whereas this one was okay, goalkeeper. There you go. You're the main guy or main girl at these days in terms of what you play, and I got picked for the Irish trials, so I was the first player outside of Dublin at the time to get picked for Ireland under Brian Kerr's sporting directorship with the FBI. And I fell in love with it then because, as I said, I was big. I could kick a ball. Even now, I can put the ball down in the 6-yard box. I can kick it over the far post in a soccer pitch because the weight of GAA football versus a soccer football is so different. So
yes.
Kicking GAA balls for fun. And now I'm kicking a soccer ball and it's just going woo way up there. And you're kind of going like, oh, wow. And at the time, it was all long ball. Now it's all short ball and playing and stuff like that. So I fell in love with it then. And there was Packy Bonner was down in Tralee to open some bank branch. And I remember myself and one of my mates, Frank Savage, who played football and soccer, who was a good player. We went to see him, you know. And I think I still have the photograph somewhere, or my mother has the photograph of Packy behind the counter with his hand around myself and Frank. And I think ever since that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a goalkeeper. And from a very young age, really young age, sport, I just love sport. And sport is a passion, and it still is a passion for me. Whether I play or I watch or I'm involved training people or helping people. And I always knew that I would never settle for second best. Never. Once I became number one, and that's a selfish thing. And looking back on that, I missed out on an awful lot of external things that were going on with my friends in childhood because where's Niall? Niall's on the soccer pitch. Where's Niall? Niall's playing football. Where's Niall? Niall's in the gym. So Niall was just fascinated with the world of sport because I was decent. And when I started getting the recognition and by people who knew about football and soccer and stuff like that, I was like, okay, there's something here. And I was never pushed into it by my mother because, as my mother would say to you, all she had was washing. It was just 6 times a week, the washing machine on. It's all Niles. So, and then it just developed then after that when I started getting involved, when I got involved with Ireland and I started playing with the underage setup and we went to Europe and we went to the Youth World Cup. It was really, looking back, it was kind of cool how I fell into goals. That's the honest answer. I fell into goals. But now I suppose looking back on it and what I do and my philosophies and the whole thing, it was meant to be. I just didn't know at the time because I was too young. I was in it. It was meant to be and meant to happen. So soccer was my first love. GAA was my second love. It was that. It was my friends and just playing around and having the freedom to walk around the corner, and I'm in with Kern's football pitch, and I'm just kicking ball for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and getting chased out of it because we're playing soccer matches as well in there. So we're getting
that's surprising, excommunicated. But I from my perspective, I had a really good interview recently with Johan van Graan, who's the head coach of Munster, was the head coach of Munster Rugby, is now at Bath, and he made a really interesting comment to me about luck and how people get luck and they get an opportunity to have luck, but it's how they then use that luck. So it's all well and good getting the luck and opportunity, but you seem to then go and develop that. Do you think that's a mindset that you would have had as a person, or is it a scenario where you, and therefore would you have seen other players playing roughly around the same time as you who had somewhat skill but didn't have the mindset? Would you say that's a fair comment?
Yes, I would, but I'd also say that from a very young age. So I used to have to travel to Dublin every Friday, Saturday, Sunday for training. And at the time, I suppose in Kerry, and it applies now, there's a lot of people in Kerry would say there's nothing exists outside out of the county boundaries, right? Whereas at a very young age, I got exposed to the facilities and the type of training in Dublin. And like, we used to train in the AUL, Clonshock in the AUL complex. And you were going in here and there's like 14, 15 pitches, all amazing pitches. You're kind of going like, wow. And then you're coming back down and you're playing in mud and all that stuff. But without that mud, I wouldn't be able to, or have the good fortune to play in really good pitches and get what I got exposed to. But I got exposed to it from a very young age. And that changed my mindset, because I remember Brian Kerr telling me when they brought up all for the trials and stuff like that, and there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people there. And I remember him saying he says, you have to be 3, 4, 5 times better than the lad in Dublin, he says, if you want to play up here, because we're from the country. And I'm going to say now, tongue in cheek, I was, but at the time I didn't know, but it really comes down to then allowing yourself to go into it and having the support of your family, especially like when you're coming from a single parent family. Now, my mom was one of 13, so I had massive support, never wanted anything. And I don't want anyone here going, oh, isn't he great? What a load of you know what. But I had the support and I had the encouragement if I wanted to do it, but I also had the encouragement if I didn't want to do it. And because I just loved sport, and and it still gets me to this day. I was like, only for sport, I could have gone down different paths. Like every other kid at my age could have gone down different paths. And nowadays, and I think it's more prevalent these days in the modern era than what was in the 80s and the 90s. I got exposed very young to call it professional coaching and unbelievable facilities, and I loved it. I embraced it, and I wanted more. And that was the key. It came from I wanted it, and I suppose that is a mindset of the whole thing. But it was a mindset of a goalkeeper that you're focused all the time, and you're the person that's dictating everything, and you're pulling the strings of different things, and they rely on you. Because I got it when I was 15, we were playing England in Talca Park, and it was when the friendships weren't so friendly with England, and it was a sellout crowd. And Talca Park pitch to this day is one of the best pitches I've ever played on. It's just beautiful. And down in the right hand corner, there's a little slope, and you know how to play the ball around, and it was unreal. But we were training, and we were going back to the hotel the day beforehand, and I was in the front seat. Richard Dunn was in the back. Jason Gavin was in the back. Tim McGrath was in the back seat. Richard played with Everton. I was signing for Peterborough. Jason was with Middlesbrough, and Tim was with Glasgow Celtic. And the coach was driving. The coach turns to me and goes, "What's your biggest fear?" I looked at him kind of going, "Biggest fear?" In my own head, I'm only 15. I don't have any fear. So I said, I suppose it's letting the goal in. I hadn't a clue what to say, so I tried to keep it on point to soccer. He said, right, he says, I'm going to give you a piece of advice and you can take it or not take it. He says, you see the three boys in the back? Yeah. I said, they play in front of you. He goes, yeah. And I says, if you call the ball and they put their head in the way, he said, you better take their head off. He says, because your job is to have the ball in your hands. And he goes, once you have the ball in your hands, you're in control. I was like, right, okay. In my head, kind of going, this fella is absolutely bonkers. And he said, remember what I said? He said, if you call for it and they put their head in the way, you take the head, make sure you get the ball. It was great. So following night, I know it. And he said, you have to be emotionless as a goalkeeper. And it stuck with me ever since. The following night, we were playing. The first half, 25 minutes into the first half, I was playing a high line sweeper. I remember, well, ball played over top. I called keepers. I was doing half volley. Tim McGrath decides he'll do a diving header. But if he did a diving header, the ball went over the goal post and his head went over the stand. Right? And I was like, of course, I was like, oh my God. And I looked over to the coach and the coach went, remember what I told you? So Tim, he was taken away, carried off, and he was about 9.5 grams worth of damage I did to his face and his teeth. And at half time I went in and I was kind of like, how is he? And then the coach came down, put his hand around me and said, look, Tim is fine. Just remember what I said. You as a keeper cannot have emotions. You just need to have the ball, and you got the ball, so well done. And that has stayed with me ever since. But obviously, you fine tune it and you make it applicable to certain situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that kind of helped me then, to progress further and further and further. And like one thing with my mom was she knew nothing about sport, thanks be to God. And I barred her from going to my games because anytime I touched the ball, all I heard was, oh Jesus, he has it. Sellout crowd. And I'm like, no, I can't have this. Go away, you're done. My mom always made sure that I did my education. No, hey, I'm a young lad. All I want is ball. Ball. That was my education. And we had many a heated conversation, we'll say. Normally ending with me getting a clip behind the back of the head. But it was all to educate. And, I was good at school, but I was better at sport because I loved it. It was my thing. But I did it. And I suppose, again, when I finished playing soccer on my terms, I quit. And it's my only regret in life. I don't do regrets, but I have one regret in life, which was quitting playing professional soccer because I was really good at it. And it was different circumstances made me feel that way. But it was the biggest thing that got me to that point was this particular coach, very famous coach, Irish coach. I asked him one day, why were we doing a particular drill? So the way my brain works is why, what, and how. If you explain those three things to me, I'll never forget it, ever. And we were doing this drill in Leicester, and Peggy Axfix was doing this particular drill, and we were allowed to pick our favorite drill, and then we have to do the other drills with it. And I was asking him, walking in after training, and look, and he said, why were we doing this particular drill? And he was looking at me, and with a decent walk back into the training room, and he says, Hobbs, and I was like, yeah. He says, that's just the way it's done. And I was like, so and at that time I was still doing my Irish education, and at that time I didn't realize it at that time, but it took a struggle big time for 2 weeks. I mean, a really bad struggle to understand or comprehend. There has to be a reason to it,
Yeah.
So from a young age, again, I found I was very inquisitive of trying to understand the why, the what, and the how. And that was one of the main reasons I quit professional soccer. Not because I wasn't good or not because I had the contract. I was really good. It just didn't get me upstairs. So I was very fortunate to do a good leaving cert. And I came back home and I went to the Institute of Technology, Tralee. to play GAA of all things, and I was doing health and leisure studies there, which was and still is an amazing course. But it's an amazing course because of the lectures that they have, and it's some fantastic people that I'm still in contact with today, and I could ring and pick their brains and stuff, and that got me into the understanding of why. So from a young age, I was good at two things. I was good at sport and health and fitness, and anything to do with that. And I stuck with it. And I'm 44 now, and I'm still in that field, but on a much wider scale, and a much deeper intrinsic scale as well.
I find it fascinating as well that and brilliant, first of all, from your mother to be able to push that education piece, because that mustn't have been easy, because you were just jumping up and down saying all I want to do is play ball, as you said. But then to go to the next level when you made that decision yourself in early to mid 20s that you were going to move on, what was the next steps like? So you finished your career, you've decided today is done, I've come home to Tralee, I got my qualification. Was it a case of that you already had a path in your head, or was it something that you then fell into the next steps? What was the next steps look like?
I had no path in my head, is the honest answer. I had, when I stopped playing, I went straight into college. So I was good. I went straight into college, and I was getting my fix because, like in college, like I had the likes of people who would know GA. We had the likes of Jimmy McGuinness, Colin Parkinson, Padraig Joyce, Noel Kennelly, and many more footballing stars from all over Ireland, and I was playing with them. So I was getting my fix of high performance football, as well as getting my fix of the fitness side of things and understanding the performance side of things. And even back then, and to this very day, I have a huge appetite for knowledge, for learning new things. And it may have nothing to do with sport or fitness or anything like that, but I just have an appetite for learning from people and learning different skills that, okay, how can now I apply that into what I'm doing and help others on the whole thing. And I suppose from there, I got another piece of advice when I started college, first year in college. Pat Flanagan was the exercise physiologist lecturer, and he only recently retired, but he was the strength and conditioning for Kerry and so on. And he gave me a piece of advice, and he said, while you're in college, he says, get as much experience working in the industry, he says, as possible. Because when you leave, you'll walk into a job. And I did, I worked through college, and I worked for free during college because it was a passion, and I didn't see it as a job. And when I qualified then and I left, I fell into a job. I fell into a design job for designing health clubs and spas, which I did. And then I started working in Dublin as a personal trainer. And I went back then playing soccer with St. Patrick's Athletic, who then loaned me out to Longford Town under the current boss, Stephen Kinney, and we got promotion that year. And then from there, I played with Bray for a couple of years. And then I had to stop playing when I was 28 with Bray, because my business was just going to a different level, and I didn't have the time to commit to the requirements of Bray. But I would never ever do something half-heartedly anyway. It's not in my makeup, but I just couldn't, And I never came back, and I never played junior football or junior soccer or anything like that. And looking back, it's I missed out. Definitely missed out, because I missed out in reconnecting and playing with the guys I grew up with. But I was on a different path, and I was on a different journey. I was living in Dublin at the time, and I was being exposed to a lot of different and international things, which I'm very grateful for on the whole thing. And so it was that. So I had no path. So I forged my own path, and I'm a person that the glass is always full. It's never half full or half empty. I see, as a goalkeeper, I see things differently to everybody. And I think there was a study done recently which finally proved I am not insane. Was that there was a study done in Trinity or UCD that on goalkeepers, how goalkeepers perceive things differently, and how we can take number of different stimuluses and separate them to make different decisions, but make the decisions faster than anyone else. So when I was reading that, I was like, yes, brilliant. It only took them 44 years to say I'm not mad. So I still have that appetite right now, in what we're doing, and the way things are going now, and going to go in the next 5 and 10 years in the sporting industry. It's phenomenal.
So tell me what today is like. So what's now like age 44 with Lil Ab Sports Technologies? First of all, what is it you guys do? And then second of all, what's a day like for you right now?
So what does Lil Ab Sports Technology? So Lil Ab Sports Technologies is a sports sensor technology company. Being a goalkeeper, we never had data. So we have designed over the last couple of years, and currently we're back in redoing something. We've developed the world's first glove sensor technology that will give you objective real-time data feedback to the coaches. So you know the GPS units in the back that you wear? Yep. So us goalkeepers, we're a unique breed. Is a word I would say.
An interesting term, yeah.
And we don't like being restricted upper body, and with these GPS units, you're restricted because you have to wear the top, and you put a sizable thing in, to your back. And with goalkeepers, if you dive backwards, you have a higher risk of spinal injury if you landed on it. Us goalkeepers, when we dive, we're landing at 1.5, 2 Gs if we're diving high. So that's a huge impact. So I was kind of going like, right, the most important tool for a goalkeeper are these. So let's do something about it, So ego started years back. I developed a range of gloves. Always wanted my own gloves, but I wanted my own gloves that are the high performing glove that I had when I was growing up. I was very fortunate to be sponsored by Adidas at the time and all that. So I didn't want to develop my own range of goalkeeping gloves. Started at goalkeeping gloves. We got that, but I always designed it with a mechanism to put technology into it, and that was the gateway for it. And I suppose, me talking to you today is the first time I suppose I've spoken publicly on what we're doing, which is kind of strange, but very comfortable as well on the whole thing. So we started off developing glove sensor technology, and we've tested it. It's great with our gloves. And then I was like, okay, I look after athletes in all different codes all over the world in different professional sports. So let's see how I can take this technology into their thing. And then, of course, the ego kicked in again. I developed a new patented golf glove, a new patented American football glove, goalkeeping gloves. But with all that, that was where the ego was. The science behind all that then was in the intriguing part, and the technology and what we were getting back and what we were being told was even better than I hoped and better than what I expected. So that's something that's kind of what I say is outside my control, because I'm not a technologist or an engineering tech or anything like that. I'm a sports scientist. And at the moment, we're doing a collaboration with a college, a university in Ireland, and they're now redeveloping the whole thing, and it'll be the next 3 months we're ready to go in again and really change a lot of things with sports gloves, to be honest, in how they're made and how they perform for the athlete, because there's a lot of interesting moving parts on how you perform with your hands. It's not as simple as move your hands. There's a lot of things go on. And now, so what we do now is we have a business called Cryo. So in the last 3 weeks, we have just signed a massive deal to take the rights of cryotherapy for humans in many countries, including Ireland, UK, and so on. And we have now signed exclusive rights for the first whole body equine cryotherapy unit.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's so simple, it's complicated, but it's when you look, see it, and you see these massive specimens inside it, you're kind of going like, oh wow, that is cool. So and we're working with that, and with that then comes the other part of what we do is, so I developed about 6 months, 9 months ago, I developed and formalized a 10-step ocular performance vision scenario. So we painted it globally. And if you think about it and you think about 1 + 1 is always going to give us 2 no matter where we go in the world, is that if we can't see at the highest level or an elite level, but we're never really going to fulfill our potential as an athlete, no matter how good we are. And that's a horrible truth. So we started looking at testing eyes. And I know when I was playing, we used to go in and get our eyes tested. Can you read that? How far down can you read? Yeah, he's fine. But then there's so much more to the eye of stress, strain, color, being color deficit. So 1 in 7 males is color deficit. So if you're playing rugby, there's at least 2 on the pitch that are color deficit. So if they're playing against someone who's wearing a red jersey, it's going to take them longer for their eyes to connect to their brain to say, you have the ball. Okay, Anthony is rushing you, but you can't figure out what color jersey he's wearing. And by the time you make the decision, you're smashed. You turn over ball. It's the same in soccer, same in Formula 1, which is massive. So we started doing that, and we've started rolling that out. We rolled it out 3 years ago with Kerry behind the scenes. And the data we got on that was phenomenal in terms of, wow, what's going on here? But we look at it through the eyes of energy. We don't just look at it through the eyes of science, because the eyes can need a lot of energy and all that stuff. So we look at it through the eyes of energy, and how can we best energy manage the energy of the player through the coaches. So we won't directly have any influence on the player. We go to the coach and we give the coach the best information and the solution that's best for that player. Whether they avail of that or not is not on us. It's on the coach and on the player. And since then, and the conversation we've had with Premiership clubs over in the UK, and again, I bring it back to, if you're going buying a player, right? So if I'm going buying a player, the first thing I do nowadays, right, is give me his last 3 years stats. So I have all his stats for 3 years. Great. Nothing about his vision or her vision.
Yeah.
All right. So now what we started doing this year was the clubs were contacting us to see, will we go over, do the full array of tests on the players that they're looking to purchase, to buy, and also on their own team, to see where's the next 1%, where's the next 2% that they can go to. Because I suppose with my outlook on it, and I would say quite a few performance coaches' outlooks as well, is that you can only go to the well so many times with training and training techniques and what's going in advance and all that stuff. And I always say, well, I can go up to Dublin Zoo and I can get a monkey, a giraffe, and a gorilla, and a penguin, and I can coach them, right? But how fast can they recover to do it again tomorrow is the key thing. So the recovery is now coming into play, and player welfare and player well-being, which is about 5 or 10 years overdue, to be honest, across all codes of sport.
On that, because that's a very interesting point, and fascinated by sports science anyway, not knowing enough about it, but the knowledge that I would look at from that perspective is what comes next after that. So you said a really good example that 5-10 years ago this wasn't there, and I'm assuming obviously when you were playing as well, it was very much the stats. Let's see what he has, and we go based on that, and height and jump size and all these different parameters that, yeah, they're beneficial, but they don't give you the real story. Where do you think the next step is after that then? So if we've used exactly what you just said about eyes, what is there a scenario for you, that you're constantly looking for that little percentage, 1% that you can give an advantage to the team, to the player, to the coach, to make them better? And if that's the case, what's the next bit that you think is coming?
So we'll just take the eyes, right? So the eyes is, we'll do our full array of tests. and we'll get all the optical data. My job then is to convert that into sports science data so the coaches can understand, right? But really, they don't understand because this is not their space. We went to college and we studied physiology and energy systems and muscle fibers and so on. And what I find and what I am finding both in Ireland and abroad is that you're talking to coaches who don't know anything about it, but pretend to know about it. And yeah, give me that, and I spoke to one coach right at the start of the season in soccer, right, and I said to him, look, this is what we're willing to do for you, do a partnership, right? We want to put it out there to them and do a sponsorship. And I was told by him, send on the information, the data, for them to analyze it and come back to me. And I said, what are you analyzing? I don't know. So to go on to your question is what's next? So once we can find where you are at this moment in time with your eyes, right? There's a color deficient, peripheral vision, MPI, all this different thing. Then the cognitive neuro training. So technology now comes into play. And technology has always been there, but it's never been really utilized to its maximum potential in the correct way. So now with the VR headsets and all this stuff, we can now do cognitive neuro training specific to you and specific to me. So there's no more generic stuff. So this size 11 fits all is gone. Everything now has to be bespoke for your goalkeeper, your defender, your out half, your forward, your prop, so, and to the point that it is so bespoke, it takes into consideration, okay, how long you sleep, what you're doing throughout the day, what type of training you have. So you're doing this type of training today, and okay, so now there's a recovery strategy. That recovery strategy looks like this for the next period of time, and this is what you need to do. And then the following day, there's your training program and a recovery strategy. So the bespokeness or the tailoredness is going to take over. Technology is taking over. Sports science has done extremely well and brought things on phenomenally. But I think, and a lot of people won't agree with what I'm saying, and that's okay. But I do believe that sports science is ruining sport at the moment across all codes. Not with the experienced coaches, with the new and up-and-coming coaches that are coming out of college, and with different clubs and counties and teams looking for get someone in cheap. And that's the horrible way of saying it, but that's what it is. And, they don't have life experience to understand that, okay, what's in a textbook, it's not really applicable in the real world when you have a 19 or 21 stone guy or girl running at you to just maul you to get the ball, and they don't teach that. So at the moment, I think sports science is being misused too much. There's too much reliance on the data that you get and how good were you today, Anthony, right? There's too much reliance on that rather than saying, okay, well, here are your stats. Now we'll give that over to the recovery strategist, recovery specialist, which is us, and we will come up with the recovery strategy for you to allow you have a better quality of life, enjoy your sport and your playing more, and give you that extra bit of energy to enjoy life outside of football or outside of rugby or outside of golf or Formula One, because that's what's missing, and me looking back on my career, that's what was missing for me. It was just all so, you're in there, you're in the zone, you're in this bubble, and it's great, brilliant. I've made so many great friends and connections, and I'm still, connected with still. But to really and truly have the best athlete in front of you, whether it's male or female, you have to look after them physically, emotionally, which nobody looks at, psychologically. And within all those three realms is all about recovery. So it's recovery on, is it cryotherapy? Is it nutrition? Is it massage? I'll give you an example. I did a contract years ago, a private consultancy contract with a top Premiership club. And this particular manager, phenomenal. Oh, phenomenal. Because he was phenomenal because he looked at each player individually and he looked at their weaknesses, not their strengths. And he had the openness to and the willingness to look at the other possibilities that can help his players. So it was through chance again. I bumped into him. What do you do? This, oh, would you be interested in? So he gave me 3 players. And he said, I want you, he says, you're responsible for them for 3 years, he says, physically, psychologically, he says, to develop them as players. And one of my business was called BTS, Beneath the Surface. And what that stood for was inside everybody, there's somebody else. So what we see right now, it's not what we normally get. And professional players are no different. They're actually more inclined to be totally different.
Yeah.
So when I started working with him, and like the sports side of it was great because, like, I'm still able to kick a ball and catch a ball, and have the crack. But when we really started delving into it, a lot of these players, and now to this present day, in senior football and rugby and soccer and all this stuff, the emotional side of things is neglected because it's like a taboo. Oh, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to talk about that. But when we address all the 3, physical, psychological, and emotional, well, then we're developing the person as a human. And if you have a better human in front of you, you automatically have a better athlete in front of you because that person then goes back. They have me. They're really into me. They're looking after me. They're protecting me. They're not just saying, I'm a commodity. What can I get out of this person? And then we're going to sell them. But even if we look at it that way, in the cold harshness of a soccer player being a commodity, well, why not make them the best commodity possible? So they get a better return and we get a return. And that's harsh sport, a professional sport. But where things are going at the moment is things are going to be interesting in the next 5 to 10 years, and to see how much technology, VR, AI come into play, and the human side of it.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a fascinating part of sport. I agree as well with you've got to have qualified people to do it. And it's a new age sport, a new area of sport. And like anything, it needs to settle a little bit and get into what it is. And I find that fascinating. It was instantly, when I was listening to you, I was instantly thinking of, let's say, the NFL, which is where people look at American sport and how they very much see the players as the commodity, and the player understands that, but they work with that together. I think it's fascinating. I could talk to you all day, and I really could, but I'd be stuck here. I'd be still here at 10 tonight. So I'm going to go to the last bit. And the last bit is literally a quick fire stuff on you. I keep saying quick fire, but it's not really quick fire. The questions that I ask, and it's the first thing that comes to your head, is the answer. Don't worry, I'm not going to do it to catch out on you. Nothing in it. If you don't know the answer, or if you've got a different answer, give me whatever answer that comes first.
Okay.
So, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Netflix or the cinema?
Oh, Netflix.
What's your most recent Netflix love?
Beckham.
What did Victoria Beckham come across really well?
Absolutely. I was very fortunate. Years ago, I met them because of different things and all that, and you wouldn't know any of that because of the show. But amazing. I mean, like, it gave an insight of the ugly side of sport.
Yes, 100%. And
I have so much admiration for her as a human being, but I have admiration more for him as well, because everything he had to go through to be where he is right now. You know what? It's an inspiration, but it's also drive, and it's also that want to do better, and now it is that want to give back and give the opportunities to people. I think it's fascinating.
You were watching bullying live at the time. I remember I was younger at the time, and I found it. Even then, I found it a bit unsettling, if I'm honest. Best stadium you've ever been in?
Ooh. Right. Okay. I have 2. Wembley, played there. Crow Park, played there. So Crow Park and Wembley, my 2.
Best moment on the sports field you've ever witnessed. So it doesn't have to be playing. It could be you could have been watching from the sideline. And by the way, it could be anything from an under-11s game right through to the professional sport. What's the one thing that stands out when I ask that question?
Well, I suppose for me, right, I have two daughters, 10, and I have a daughter 8 who's gone on 37. So my eldest has a mild form of autism, which is social and team sports. And I suppose my greatest moment was when she came to me and she said, "Daddy, I want to play football." I was like, "What?" And then when she played football, she said, "Daddy, I want to go on goals."
Ah, cool.
And that was only 9 months ago. So that's my best moment because I know what she had to go through herself to get to that point of being comfortable to actually play. And I swear to God to you, I'm not just saying this. She's a natural because she just loves telling people what to do. I was like, "You're gonna go along, guys."
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I
No,
guess.
no, that's my moment.
What's the strangest thing you've seen on a football pitch or any sporting pitch? What's the strangest thing you saw?
There's some stories I can't tell. Right? I suppose one of the strangest things on a field was we were playing in France. We were playing over in France. The Irish team were playing Spain, playing Cameroons. So we were under 15, 16, and they were 19. So different rules for them, right? So rules was. And the strangest thing was this guy was playing, and whatever way he just stopped, and from his shorts he pulled out an orange from his shorts as he was playing, and he was running, and he was eating the orange, and he caught the orange, and he flung it at one of our lads. He just ran up, and it was like, "What do you do?" So yeah, that was one of the strangest thing I've ever seen happen on
Burger and chips or a Sunday roast?
yeah, burger and chips.
Best takeaway you've had?
Ooh, wow, that's a tough one.
Doesn't have to be a place. It can be an actual dinner. It can actually be a meal. Doesn't have to be a place.
Best takeaway I would have had would be fish and chips by the coast. Proper fish, proper chips.
Yeah, there's a place out. There's a place out in West Clare, out towards Milltown Malbay, and they do the most amazing fish I've ever had in my life. And I wouldn't. Oh, sensational. This is going to be an interesting one for you because I've asked this to a lot of other people and I kind of predicted the answer, but I don't know the answer for you on this one. The most famous person, in your opinion, that you've ever met?
Okay, so I've worked with members of different royal families. I've worked with many American Hollywood movie stars and musicians, and I've worked with many Irish ones. The most interesting and intriguing person that I've ever met and looked after would be Gabriel Byrne.
Oh yes.
And if I was to talk about sport, it would have to be the one, the only, and the legend, and an amazing human being, John Alomo.
Yeah, wow. That's two brilliant extremes, but two brilliant examples. Gabriel Byrne, absolutely, from one of my favorite films of all time. Sporting event in 2024 you can't miss.
Oh yes. Ireland versus England rugby.
We need it. We need a good day after the last round of rugby once. This is the last one I'm going to ask, and it's the last question I'll ask of you. I used to ask the question in this way: if sport wasn't around, what would it do to your life? But I've changed it now to: could you define what sport means to you in 2 or 3 sentences?
What it means to me now, where I am right now in my life, sport is, or has been, and will, and is a pathway to allowing me help others change player welfare and well-being and performance going forward. So what sport is to me, sport is the vehicle for allowing change.
Niall, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Where can people find out more about what you guys do and what you're doing at the moment?
Well, we don't have a website because it's under construction because of what we're doing. If they want to jump onto Facebook and get me personally, Niall Hobbert. If you want to jump onto LinkedIn, Niall Hobbert. And I have a philosophy that is whoever reaches out to me or asks questions, I personally go back to them, because
I can say that.
best thing that we can only do and give people is our time, and I think that's something that will stay with me forever.
And you've done it with me, a prime example of that when I jumped on and had a conversation with you originally. This has been absolutely fascinating. So thank you so much for your time, my man. And I'm definitely going to have you back on. I'm definitely going to have to ask you some more questions, because I think there's quite a few more there. But no, thank you so much for your
No, I appreciate it.
really
For the
appreciate
opportunity
it.
to speak to you.
Cheers, buddy. Now, that was fascinating, because I've spoken to a lot of people on this series when it's talking about the sport and about the player and what it's like to be a player, what it's like to be a coach, or what it's like to be an individual connected to the sport, or even executives and CEOs when they're looking at the commercialization of it. But what I found really fascinating with that conversation is the detail to which Niall was talking about individuals, and the detail to which the next level of sport will be. So whether it's a player watching this, or whether it's a federation or a club or a brand watching this, you need to start thinking about, when you're connecting in with your players, what exactly it is you're looking for, and how can you bring that 1%. So you had a very interesting thing about getting that 0.5% to get that next level up. Well, that could also be taken in from a brand and a commercialization perspective. So if you're sponsoring a player, do you know what their impact is on their daytime? Do you understand that if you're bringing them out at 6 o'clock at night, what impact that has on their recovery when it comes to them performing on the field? So you've got to start thinking that into your mindset when you're looking at sponsorship of players or sponsorship of teams. You need to start thinking about that and characterizing it. I found it a fascinating conversation. As I say, normally I have around 30 to 35 minutes. I'm up at 52 already, and I guarantee you I could have stayed there for another 30, 45, 40, 50 minutes. I guarantee I'm going to have him back on. In the meantime, what I'll do to everybody is I've got loads more podcasts coming up. You can check them all out online. You can check them up on AMSC.se, and you can find all the details. I'll make sure to put Niall's details as well at the bottom of this episode if you want to get in touch with him and have a chat to him about what he does. In the meantime, when my music kicks in and starts kicking me out, all I can say to you is take yourselves easy, look after yourself, speak soon. Thanks very much.